All right, so far in the game, we basically have it semi-working. Right, so basically I can move around and I can jump. Yay. But one of the problems is I can go off the edge, and then that's it. It doesn't do anything for me. So the next thing I want to fix, basically, is make it so I can die. But when I die, I'm not actually going to have it die, per se, yet. I did air quotes, you can't see them. But I'm just going to have it reset and start at the top instead. I'm just going to make sure, I don't know if I did this last time, but freeze rotations. Okay, on the rigid body 2D. Okay, because I noticed that it kind of turned as it went off. So we're just going to basically, it's going to be really easy. We're just going to make what I'm going to call a death box. So you're going to create empty, and then I'm just going to call it, we'll call it death box. Okay, or actually let's call it fall box. That's better. So I'm going to call it fall box, and I'm going to make a script that goes on there. So we're just going to go and create. So right click, create C# script. I'm just going to call it death box script, and I'm basically just going to make a generic script that's going to reset the player position, or just say at least that it died. That's more or less what we're looking for. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to actually, before I do that, on my fall box here, the way that I'm gonna work, I'm just gonna make a big old box, a big old trigger, and then if something enters it, it's going to say that you died. So we're gonna do a box collider on this empty object. Let me see, fall box. Okay, good. And then we'll just do edit collider, and I'm just gonna pull this way down here, and this down here, and let's zoom out. Oops, that's a little much. Okay, and I'm just gonna take this, pull this out, and pull this out, and I'm just gonna make sure it's good to give it a little bit of thickness. The reason being is that, let's say they're moving really fast, this way it has a whole area to fall into. So I'll edit collider, and then I'm gonna go ahead and make it a trigger. So basically it will trigger this death box script. So I'm gonna open up my death box script, and that's gonna pop open over here. Good. All right, let's close that. Let's close some stuff. I'm gonna make this big so you can see it. Alright, I don't need any of that stuff up. Okay, let's Control plus, make it big so you guys can see. Alright, so what we're gonna do is this. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, and we aren't going to need this update either. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this update and I'm going to make it to an on trigger enter. So on trigger enter 2D. So if you remember, what that means is that when something enters this trigger, this box here, this this box that is now a trigger, that's going to automatically make it run this script. Okay. And so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to test it. We're going to say, oops, not that. We're going to say if whatever's in there, it's going to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the tag of the object that enters it. So just like when we did the ground check script, I'm going to say if col dot, okay, let's try it again, col dot cool. All right. Let's do it up here because then it won't. Okay, so when it enters, or when it when something enters the trigger and it runs this code, it will also give us what enters it. So let's go ahead and put that in here. So collider 2D, and I'm gonna name it COL. Okay, so basically it's gonna test the collider that runs into it, and it's gonna name it COL. All right, so that's just gonna be the variable. So COL is the object, is the collider of the object that enters it. So I'm gonna say COL dot, hey, look at, now it works, tag. So I'm going to say if the tag of the collider is player, then I'm going to have it run this bit of code. And all I'm going to do is have it say debug dot log. We're going to say you did. Okay. So if something enters it and the trigger and the tag of the object that enters it is just going to write to the console you did. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Let's minimize it. All right, and it's not going to work even if I try. Well, for one, I got to put the script on here. So let's go ahead and put Deathbox script on there. Good. So now that's on the object that I want that when it enters the trigger. But it's not going to work because the player, he might fall off of here, but you'll notice he doesn't have a tag called player. And actually, that's one of the ones that's already in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and do player. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on console, and I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to look to see if it says you did. So I'm going to go like this. Okay, he's going to fall. I'm going to go over here, and you did. Okay, beautiful. All right, so that works. But what I wanted to do is actually reset the player. Okay, so there's a couple ways of going about doing that. I want to try and make everything. So right now I have a script that's just going to say that it's dead, right? So in order for... I want to say that you're dead, but I don't want that script to actually hold any of the information. What I need to do is basically I need to save the player's start position so that when he dies or she dies, it'll just start right back up here again, okay? Now, I could do that on this script, but the problem is I don't want to have that on all of them. It'd be easier if basically the player controller itself handles that aspect of it, okay? So, I'd rather that was, kept track of by that, all right? So basically we'll have a script that holds the lives, and we'll have another script that basically holds the lives, the score, all that kind of information. So if there's health, it can control the health. It'll say what level it's on. Basically anything that's going to deal with the player and their the player and stuff about it, but not the player controller, which is right here, which just controls the movement and that sort of stuff. So we're going to make another script, and we're just going to call it player stats script. So I'm going to right click, create, C# script, and we're going to call it the player, if I could spell, player stats script. Okay, so we'll make player stats script, and that's just going to hold everything that deals with, the player in general. All right, so good. So yeah. So I'm going to open up my player stats script. All right, and what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to find the position of my player first off and store that. So, so to store that, I'm going to have to make a variable that's going to hold it. So we'll just right up in the top, I'm just going to do, we'll make it public. We'll do public. A vector2 because the position is x and y, so it's a vector2, and we're just going to call it player start position. Okay, so that'll be the player start position, and so right on start I need to find out where the start position is. So let's go ahead and go here. So and it's going to be player start position is going to be equal to transform dot position. Okay, let's just save that. I'm just going to make sure that this works. Go over here, and so we're going to go to player here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put the player stat script on it. Okay, and let's just move this over here so you can see it's got -2, -1.38. Let's hit play, and that number should pop right in here. There we go. So you can see, and it doesn't move anymore now. So that will be the start position. So the start position is going to be wherever it started, basically. Now we can change this later on. That you could say there's ways of working with this. That if you want them to spawn like where they fell off, you could take the position of the X, leave that to wherever they fell off, but then put it over. I don't know. There's things we could do to try and make that a bit more friendly here, but okay. So we'll find the start position here, and then the other thing I want to do basically is inside of this script, I'm going to make a lives, a function called lives, right? So I don't know if I need an update or not. I don't remember, but I'm just going to remove this for now. We can always put update in there if we want later on. So I'm just going to make another function called, let's do this. Okay. And we're just call this one lives. Okay, so this is going to be a function called lives, and basically this is going to handle how many lives we have. So this will remove lives and add lives. Okay, so in order for that to work, what we're going to do is we're going to call this function whenever we want to add a life or whenever we want to remove a life. So the easiest way to do that is that we could have it that like when we hit something that's like going to give us a life, we send this a +1, or if we do something that makes us die, we send it a -1. So what I'm going to do is just in here, I'm going to do int, because int is a whole number, and then do life. So basically, it's going to look for a whole number. We're going to send it a whole number when we call this function, and we're going to send, and the number we're going to give it is life. So it's either going to be positive or a negative number. All right. So first thing I want to do is just test whether it's positive or negative. So we're going to say if life is equal to -1, right? So it removes 1 life. We're going to go ahead and we want to reset basically that position. Okay, so should be pretty easy. So if we send it a -1, it's going to go ahead and just do transform.position. It's going to do its transform position. We're going to give it the value of the player start position, like so, and semicolon. All right, so that should, and let's go ahead and also, I'm gonna go to the, let's save that. I'm gonna go to the death box script right here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this out, Control X. I'm gonna paste that in here, so it's debug.log and you dead, just to make sure that, you know, everything's good. I'll remove this in a second, so we'll save that. Good. So now that function's there, but we need to call that function. All right. So to call the function, we're going to need to search for this function. All right. So there's a couple ways we can go about doing this. But basically, I want to have happen that when you go into this trigger, I want to call this player stats function, and I want to call the player stats script, and I want to call this function inside of it. Okay. So basically, I've got to grab this and then put that in there. So see this says player stats script. I need to make a variable that's going to hold that. So we're going to do public player stats script, and I'll just call it the same thing, player stats script. Okay, so that's what's going to name it. This is what it's going to look for. Good. And then what I'm going to do is, so I can put that in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go col dot. So that's, now if you remember, col is actually the collider. It's not the game object itself. It's the collider on the game object. So we can't do col dot get component because it's not a component in that. So we got to do col dot game object. So the game object of the collider. And then we're going to say get component, and the component we're going to get is going to be that player controller script. Okay. And then in that, I want let's see, so like that. Okay. So this will get the script. And then what we want to do is we want to send it that number in there. Okay. So the number I want to the function I want to run is going to be dot, and then I think it was lives, wasn't it? Is that what I called it? Lives. So it's going to be dot lives. Okay. Now, we can't just call dot lives. I have to give it an int. In this case, since we're dying, I'm going to do parentheses. We're going to give it a -1. Okay? Now, if I save that, looks like I actually didn't need to do this. For some reason I thought I did, but I don't think I do. Yeah, you don't need that. Okay, so it's only going to call the object when it runs into it. Dot lives. Now you notice that it's red. The reason why it's red is this. If you look over here, you see it says void lives. This function is inside this class, just like I write public in here that everybody has access to it, you have to do it with the functions too. If you want something else to have access to this function, you actually have to put public void. Now save it. And if we go back here, save it, you can see it didn't turn not red. Let's see what happens. I've done something wrong here. This one. Console. Clear. This is for lives. Player. Wait a minute. Where are you at? Player. Oh, duh. Player stats. Stat script. Let's try that again. Wait a minute. Player stat. Yeah. Control S. Well, that would have been red if it wasn't public either. My bad. Okay, so I had player controller script in there. I meant player stat script. All right, let's go back here. All right. And good. Okay, so now we'll hit play. And boom. And if I go off, hey, there it goes. Okay. So just as a reminder, basically what it's doing is in this fall box. So this is my, I grab this player, right? He's going to go over, he's going to fall into this box, right? And then in the fall box is a trigger, okay? And it has this death box script attached to it. In the death box script, it's going to run this on trigger enter if anything hits it, right? So if that trigger gets something penetrates it, it runs what's inside of this function. What this function is going to do is it's going to test the collider that runs into it. It's going to test its tag. If the tag is player, which we have tagged on that player, that's what it's tagged as player, the game object that we're controlling. If that is true, it's going to go ahead and it's going to on the collider, it's going to look for the game object, and then in that game object the collider's attached to, it's going to grab the component that's a player stat script, which we made. If you look here it is right here. It's going to look for this script. And then on that script, it's going to run the function called lives, and it's going to send it -1. And then we made a player stat script, and we start the script off with the player start position. We right from the get-go when the game first starts. So we made the script to hold that. So when the game first starts, right on the start function here, we're going to store its position. So transform.position is the position of our player here, and it's going to pump it right into this variable. And then in here, when this function gets run, which this will run it if the player enters it, it's going to run this function here, and it's going to say, okay, if what we get sent, which is when they send the -1, the -1 is what this will end up being, this int life. So we say -1 would be here is equal to -1, then it's going to go ahead, and I can get rid of this now. It's going to go ahead and take the current position of our character and set it to the start position, which we stored at the very start of the game. Okay, and so what that's going to do basically is it's just going to reset the player at the start, right? So, which is nice because now we don't have to worry about like the game getting like stuck in essence. Okay, now obviously we need to do a little bit more than this, but that's fine. So in actuality too, we're not actually destroying the character either. You can see he's never actually going away. He's not really dying, if you will. He's more or less just being reset, the position. All right, good. So that's working pretty good. So some other things that we might want to do is to set up a pickup script. Okay. So that would be the next chunk on this. But at least we got the death rolling, so we'll do that in the next video. We're just gonna basically attach to the that player stat script. We're gonna attach some stuff that's gonna control more or less our scoring and things like that. Okay. But this is a good start because this actually will handle quite a bit of it. This player stat script is going to handle all of our stats.